Hey, I'm Chase from Sorcery Contested Realm, and today I'm joined by sorcery artist Alan Pollack. Alan, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Nice to be here.
So we've had a lot of fun times at some sorcery events in the past, but I'm excited to talk to you today a little about the process behind some of your work. You've shared in the past, you've been in the industry for a while. I think we can say going all the way back to your first piece in Dungeon Magazine in 1991, and then working through Dungeons and Dragons, Magic, Blizzard Entertainment, and now, of course, Sorcery Contested Realm. One of the things we're really proud of is our artists, and we like to know a little bit about the backstory and how they got to where they are today. Can you tell us a little about your journey to illustration? Did you always know you wanted to be an illustrator?
No. I mean, I've been drawing since I was very young. I want to say from like 5th, 6th grade, probably. Probably been drawing since then, but I really didn't realize that it was something that you could do for a living until probably, I'm still not sure about that. But no, but
too real. No.
Probably, probably in my early 20s, maybe late teens, early 20s, somewhere in there, that I realized it could actually be that people made a living doing it. I mean, I don't know why it took me as long as it did, because when I was younger, I was certainly buying the old horror fanzines like Creepy and Eerie and Psycho and Nightmare and Boris and Frazetta and Ken Kelly and San Julian and I can't even think of all the rest of the artists that were on the covers of those horror magazines. And I'm a big horror fan, so I was buying them all. I still have a lot of them, but I was buying a lot of those all the time. And it's a full-size magazine, so you had this big, almost like an album cover thing, where you have this big piece of art on there. So that was really cool, but I didn't, I was too young. I wasn't even really painting or anything at that point when I was looking at these things. So,
but it got in the back of your head there. You got that sort of the earworm in there.
I was definitely into the, the art, but I wasn't looking at it saying, oh, they actually painted this thing. I wasn't thinking about all that, or thinking how they could make a living at it. I was too young. I was 6th, 7th grade. Probably when I was looking at that stuff, 5th, 6th, 7th grade in there. And of course, album covers, I loved looking at album cover. I bought a lot of the albums that I bought was because of the covers, so it certainly lent itself more towards heavy metal and hard rock because they had more of the scarier, art on there, fantastic art, horror, that kind of thing. But probably, I was painting denim jackets, which was mostly album cover art. I was doing that in my senior year in high school. That was all all acrylic. But then when I went to high school, when I went to college, not right after high school, but a couple of years after that, I went to college. I still was not moving forward with painting. I went to college. I didn't get a degree. I was taking classes to get better skills, learn how to, be a better artist. And I was mostly working with color pencil, not paint, for some reason. And so after I decided, and I took classes for many years in New York City and New Jersey. And then it was a while of me still looking at this art, going into Barnes & Noble or a bookstore and seeing, the fantasy section is, most people don't realize that aren't into fantasy, but the book section for the fantasy section is monstrous compared to all the other sections.
Sometimes quite literally, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? So, but that's where I discovered a lot of other artists and started to go, wow, how did they get to be on a book cover like this? This is pretty cool. But that again was probably after high school into my college, early. So it was 19, 20, 21, 22, starting to get into my head, people actually do this for a living. I wonder if that's even possible. I didn't know anybody that was doing that at the time,
Now, I know you're someone that's really into horror films. We've talked quite a bit before in the past.
Yeah.
with Gothic, there's evil as a whole is a keyword, and it's kind of made up of three groups. So you got your monsters, your undead, your demons. When it comes to sort of evils and horrors out there, do you have a favorite type that maybe falls into one of those categories, or is there some other extra? Are you more of like a monsters guy, an undead sort of person, or demons and things like that?
I mean, they're all fun to paint. I don't mind. I'll take any one of those, but I don't know. I kind of like weird stuff, like almost like Lovecraftian kind of things where they're kind of can't really explain what it is, kind of thing. But I do, as you know, the werewolf painting was one of my favorites, so that was fun. And I do like doing undead, and demons. Like all of that stuff is fun. I'll take any of them. So.
That's sort of the irony of it, as we were talking about some of the pieces that we will talk about today, but also in the set. You also have quite a few holy items, holy characters or minions or units in this set, which is sort of the irony of, right, how much you love the dark and the evil, and you get an opportunity to do the other side.
I got some evil in this one, in Archangel Michael. So there's a little bit.
Yes. Well, so this is another piece that underwent a transformation through the development process, right? Originally, this was not titled Archangel Michael.
Right. Yeah, it was Archangel Gabriel. And I couldn't tell you the difference, but the name changed.
Well, this is a piece that the designers talked about when they were like, we had an idea of what the mechanics might be, but when the piece came in, we're like, oh, no, like this is way more powerful, way more dynamic. It needs people to do more. And, so now it has an additional sort of movement component to it because of how dynamic the painting was. When you do a piece like this, now, do you start from like a reference or I guess I want to get at, like, how does your brain work when it comes to creating? You get the piece in the email, you're like, oh, they want this, and you like lean back in your chair with like a big fluffy bathrobe on with a pipe, and you're like, so I think it might be this.
No pipe.
Or do you have like a flash of insight, or like, how does it get from the prompt to these like first ideas?
I mean, it doesn't. I don't. The minute I get the art direction, I don't sit down and start sketching. I probably take a couple of 3 days to think about it. Go for walks or whatever, and roll it around in my head. Like, how do I want to?
You're not like jumping on a trampoline or like into a pool, being like, maybe this is the pose.
You'd be surprised. I don't have a trampoline, but
we need to add that to the list for future projects. We need to make sure.
I mean, I've had so many friends pose for me in such weird positions, and they're straining and struggling to hold the pose, But because when you're trying to make something look like they're flying, I mean, you have to kind of. I can play with it and change things, but you have to have like something resembling it, and then redrawing it and reworking it and changing some things, and still looking at other photo reference that you might see to kind of see, like, if he's like in this one. I'm trying to think if I was, because I'm pretty sure I posed for it. I think I was sitting on a stool and like, leaning forward kind of a thing. But then you have to kind of twist. You have to redraw things because it doesn't look right, because you don't want him to look like he's sitting. You want him to look like he's, his legs are back, he's moving forward. So if I sat like that in a chair, I'd fall over.
I feel like people always ask to see like early sketches of pieces, etc. But I feel like what we really want is the footage of you in the stool being like, "Is this just right?"
Well,
like,
some of them I could show, but some of them are, like when I post for Lumbering Giant, I don't think anyone wants to see those. So, but moving on. Sorry, moving on. But no. So for this one, I would say. I think a lot of times, I do like to go for different camera angles. I think when I see that in movies, I like it right away the minute I see it. I don't care if it's an overhead shot or a low angle shot or above angle. I like a different perspective overall. Like to me, straight on, and I'm not criticizing anybody that does this, but for me, my personal taste is I find it extremely boring. I like to be pulled in immediately when I see a painting, and a lot of that to me can be forced perspective or like really extreme angles, or like the Hildebrands used to do this a lot, where because they were very big on the the old Disney movies, which I am as well, and where they have like an obvious framed foreground of like big things in the foreground that might be in shadow, but it's shapes of something in the foreground. Then you have the middle ground where you're being pulled into that, and then the background is obviously the background, but like there's separation of everything, so it kind of frames the focal point, and lighting and lighting. So I try to think of the lighting, I try to think of the focal point, and I try to think of how I'm going to frame it with different shapes to kind of make it interesting compositionally and bring your focus. And I also with card art, I tend to not get too busy. I like detail, but I don't want things. For me, I know that it's not everybody's taste or the way that they think, but for me, I like to keep it fairly simple so that when it's printing so small on the card that people can see it. Like they're going to see this because of the lighting and the color, but it's also fairly simple in its composition and the big shapes of things. There's there's not a lot of busy stuff going on where you're like, when it's shrunken down, you look at it and you can't really tell what you're looking at till you hold the card up to your face and stare at it. Now, but again, like I think you can make a nice painting and not have all that busyness going on and still have a level of detail to it without it being so blown out of proportion. And I know some people love that. So like they're going to want that in a painting when they see it or when they buy it. But like for me, that's what I like. I like it to be like an iconic image. There needs to be focus and lighting and everything is like in drama, like,
Yeah. I mean, this has that in spades. And I guess that's actually maybe what I'm thinking is when I think about the perspective in your shots, going back to Corals and Kobolds or even Giant Shark, there is that drama, right? And even this next piece, Holy Nova, there's that drama. Like there's the faces of the people being blasted.
Well, they're demons. They're not people now.
That's right. That's right.
They have big giant horns and ears and craziness going on. But and that scene, I think when I originally came up with that idea, I was going to have it outside, and I just couldn't figure out. It took me a while. Like I didn't know what they meant by a holy nova, because a nova, I'm thinking of something outer space, because there are some things that I did that were kind of lent itself to being outside, and so I wasn't sure exactly. I was picturing like this light, kind of like fire breathing, where you have this light coming down from the heavens, hitting the lion. He's breathing fire, and I thought it was something like that, where you had, a guy or a priest or some character where the light was coming down from above, and he was channeling through him, and then blowing up this, these demons like in the foreground. And he didn't specify that they had to be demons. That was my choice, but that's what I was thinking, like an outside scene. And honestly, it just, I had that in my head, and then I just thought about it more and more and more, and it just was not really thrilling me all that much. Then I realized from talking to him that I didn't have to have the light coming from down. It just had to be like this, kind of like explosion or like this aura or whatever, like emanating from the guy. And then I just thought about putting it inside a building like that. Looking at it now, it kind of looks pretty cool. And he had me adjust some of the things. I think it was, well, I mean, when I was doing it, I wasn't thinking this is really cool. I was kind of like, I don't know through the whole thing. But I think it's because trying to show something explode like that with perspective is kind of weird. It's kind of hard to think about how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Looking at it now, it seems to work okay, but like, at the time I wasn't so sure. And he did have me, which really looks great when I look at the final version of it. And you might not even see it on the card really, but like the bottom part of the Nova explosion has more of a golden, darker golden color to it. And that way, it looks like it's more. It looks like it's glowing more than it did. Originally, it was just bright white all the way out, and I thought that was good. I thought it looked the way it should. But when I look at it now, I think it's better with the Eric's suggestion of warming it up in the foreground and darkening a little bit. So.
And this kind of goes back to that like dramatic angle, everything. I think this is like kind of feels like a classic Alan Pollack piece here. I love it. But I also want to hit, before we move on to the next piece, I want to hit on that, what you talked about, like, you sounded like you had like a moment of doubt where you're like, is this, something like self-judgment. They're like, is this good art? Or is this really hitting the thing? And I'm hoping that, like, being part of the sorcery community, being able to get that sort of fan interaction, people leaving comments on this video, seeing you at events, things like that. Folks, like, if you love artists' art, like, let them know, because it sounds like a lot of times you're kind of building these things like in isolation, right? You're at your house in your studio painting, and like you don't know how it's resonating. And this might be, if not already having shown it, but like this may be people's like favorite piece of art in the set, and like if it is, like, let the artists know, like let Alan know here, because we love your art, and there's so many of your pieces that are iconic.
Thank you.
And there's so much love here.
Well, the thing that's tricky too with gaming art is that they might love the art, but the art does nothing for them within the game. So kind of like it's like love your art, but your card sucks in the game. So see you later.
I feel like we're spoiled at Sorcery, where it's like even our most ordinary cards, have like amazing art, and so. And as the meta's change, people find new ways to unlock cards, and yours could become like the linchpin piece in a set. But at some point, you've got, I think, 15 or so pieces in Gothic, and at some point it'll be cool if we have enough sets where people can build like artist themed decks, or maybe artist team ups to reach their limits there.
Yeah.
Well, so I know we talked about how much you love horror and sort of the darker themes, and then you have, we did Archangel Michael, we did Holy Nova. We were going to talk about Smite today, but in fact, I think in talking with you about how much you love these other darker themes, especially just before we started the video, I think we're going to switch it up. Let's talk about a piece that no one has seen before, and we're just going to reveal the art for, which is Hellstar. Now, this actually has a little bit of a Lovecraftian background to it.
Yeah.
But can you talk to me about, like, what were you thinking with this piece? And then, did you have to do any research for this, or, digging? Are we already kind of somewhat familiar with it? What made this piece so much fun?
Well, the first thing that was kind of odd about this piece was I just finished Flaming Skull right before this. And so... This has a similar vibe to it for sure.
Yeah.
The format's almost exactly the same as Flaming Skull. The fencing on the bottom starts to have that swirl going up, pulling you up to the left, and it's not quite spinning like it does in Flaming Skull, but it's it's the bright orange, red, yellow thing like Flaming Skull. So it's very similar in its setup. I know I keep looking off to the side because that's where you have the artwork over there. So I don't know if people are going to actually see this setup. But I think with this one it was just basically an evil looking star in the sky, and I'm thinking like, how am I doing that? Like, come on, I mean because we don't see stars up close. It's like the little light in the sky, like
when you're
so far
staring
away.
at a star, and
to try to in my mind, I'm thinking, is it going to look like a planet? That was my main concern right off the bat. So I did look up reference for stars, but like up close, like a really close view of a star, and they're quite. I mean, from what I remember, they're quite red. I mean, there's a lot of like, crazy molten, stuff going on. It's just it's this like pixelated looking, glowing, So I tried to like at least capture what that looks like, even though it was supposed to be a creature. So it's like a star that's supposed to look like a creature, and it was supposed to have Lovecraftian kind of a vibe to it, from what I remember. So yeah, in order to see it, I figured it had to be pretty close, you know. So
although that would have been hilarious, you just submitted it and it was just like a black canvas with a one little white dot on it, and you're like, there you go.
There you go. And you have to like use a magnifying glass to actually see what it is. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, again, it was once I decided on like, okay, I think I'm just going to do this close-up version of this and try. And then again, there was the scale part of it. Like, how do you know, if I just had the Hellstar and then had little dots in the background as other stars, would that get across? Because you said it was massive, like massive star. So, you know, I'm a big fan of like the night sky and the moon. Like I love going out, checking out the moon when it's out. And so I kind of wanted to do that a little bit, kind of that vibe. Or when you have like a moon that's rising that is really orange or really red. So it's kind of like that thought when I was coming up with the whole palette for it. And being out, you know, I am out in the country, as you know, because you've been here, but so I was trying to capture that being out in the country, you know, kind of vibe in a house out in the middle of the country, and then having this. If you walked, I think I'm trying to look. Yeah, so the door is open on the front. I think is open on the front of the house. I was gonna have, now that I think about it, I was gonna have somebody like the door open in the front, and either somebody kind of a silhouette of somebody standing in the door. Or in the foreground where the fencing is, right where that post is, I was going to have just like someone kind of like walking left beyond the post. So you kind of see a little glimpse of their hand on the post or something weird. But I don't know. Decide not to do that.
That kind of goes back to the idea of like that simplicity factor, right? Like,
yeah, I think so. Because it's not about, I didn't want it to start to be about, well, who's this person? And like, you know, because it's not really about that. It's about the star. So, you know, and I didn't, you know, we never know what the card does within the game, you know, so I didn't know all that. So I didn't want to mess with it too much, you know.
Was that one of the weirder prompts that you got for this set? Or like, what was the prompt maybe? Was there one that stands out in your mind when you got, you're like, I don't know how to do this one. Like maybe it was Holy Nova. I don't know.
Let me think.
Or does that never happen? I just feel like sometimes you're like, so I need an evil star with a tongue.
Well, yeah. The one that I've already told you that this one was it's kind of odd for me. Yeah. That was a weird one that I misunderstood when I read the art suggestion, but. Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones is the one with the pigs, and without anybody knowing, because, that was a different. I don't think I've ever done that angle before, and not that it's a strange angle, but it's just something I had never, tried to do before. So, and I originally did not think of going with that angle, but anyway, we're talking about something that no one can see. So,
well, and people are going to get to see your full body of Gothic work on December 5th. When our set launches. But in the meantime, if folks want to see more of you and the stuff you're working on, whether it's Sorcery or other things, where can people find out more about your work?
They can go to patreon.com/Alan Pollack and see all kinds of stuff that you're probably not going to see on Instagram, which is my other platform, which is Pollack Art 64. But on Instagram, no matter how many followers you have, there's only like 2% of them are seeing what you do. So Patreon is actually the better choice. You can be a free member, or you can sign up for a $5 a month subscription. It's not really a lot of money if you're really like me or any other artist, because then you get to see all of everything, what they're doing, behind the scenes stuff, live stream. I just did a live stream a couple nights ago, which was really great. And, get to hang out and have a beer and just chat with people, that kind of thing. So that's probably the two best ways. I'm on Facebook too. I think when I post on Instagram, it goes automatically to Facebook, but I'm not really on Facebook.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, hopefully people check it out. And of course, you can also find out more about Alan at sorcerytcg.com/art, where we have our artist portfolios, and they link to their socials from there as well. So make sure folks come and check out and explore, all of our talented artists that are putting in the work behind the scenes to make Gothic so gripping. And I know we've kind of teased with the Hellstar here, things to come. But I can't wait for people to see your entire collection of work in Gothic. And we're getting close now. So only a couple more, only a little bit more time. And then we'll be diving in.
Can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Alan, thanks so much for coming on to talk with us. And until next time, best of luck contesting the realm.